Okay, welcome back, everybody. We had a break from Tisha B'Av, so it's been 2 weeks since we had our last class. I'll begin with a quick review. This week and next week is sort of still Ben Azmanim, as before Rabbi J starts his Elul series. So I'm going to finish up my Mishkan Har Sinai topic. Today I want to dedicate the shir to the Mishkan and Shabbat. And to show the connection between them, basically today we're going to compare Vayakal Pekudei to Truma Tetzaveh and understand why the repeat in the order. But I'm going to focus more on Shabbat because that's how Parsha Vayakal begins, the second section. So let me just share my source sheet. Where are we? We are here. Okay. That share should be on. And just a quick review of my 4 boxes we've been doing all the time. So remember we had Mamad Har Sinai, Yitro Mishpatim, started for the Hebrew version. The Hebrew is nice and easy. Then followed by the Tzivui, the commandment to build the Mishkan. Then we have Chet Egel, and then building the Mishkan. We talked about the order, that's the arrows. We did that almost every single shir till now, explaining the machlok between Rashi and Ramban. Rashi putting things out of order, and our main conclusion was that even though the Mishkan is recorded here, right after Mamad Har Sinai, Chazal explained that this specific commandment to build this specific Mishkan, this portable temple, was given after and in light of Chet HaEgel, but the original need for a temple, reminding us of Har Sinai, would have been given no matter what. And that would have been, and in order to highlight the connection between the Mikdash of the Mishkan, the idea of a temple, be it permanent or portable, or temporary. So Chumash purposely takes this unit to Mishkan and moves it earlier to highlight its connection to Har Sinai. That was our topic we did before. Now, what I want to do first is read the opening psukim of Parshat Vayikra in a regular Chumash, just to show you the order and something special about Shabbat. So where are we? Let me open up a regular Chumash. Share the screen, and we're going to open up a Chumash. Here we go. We want a new tab, and we want to open up. Here we go. Okay, chapter 35. Nice and simple. Vayakel Moshe called up in Israel v'yamar lehem. Okay. Eila hadvarim asher tziva Hashem lasot otam. Now, this for sure is going to be the commandment from chapter 35 to 40. We'll be building the Mishkan. Who can tell me why the use of the word Vayakel is important? How come the verb Vayakel, which doesn't come up that often in Chumash, why do you think that specifically that word is used to begin putting the Mishkan together? Anyone with a quick suggestion?
Everybody has a part in it, that it's like it's basically a task of
So
everybody.
we can attach it to the mitzvah of Hakel, like we had in
Okay.
we'll have this week in Parshat Bet Hanan, Yom HaKahal. And Vayakel Moshe, actually we just had that. Vayakel Moshe called. I mean, we have remember what happened in Har Sinai, B'Yom HaKahal, and later the mitzvah of Hakel. That it sort of relates to Har Sinai. But give me that's if I'm highlighting the connection to Har Sinai. If I want to highlight the connection to Chet HaEgel, we're going to go back to chapter 32. Remember? The people see that Moshe is delayed coming down from the mountain. And that was one of the key parallels between the Mishkan and Chet HaEgel, was that they wanted a symbol representing God, leading them the way to conquer the land. And here now we're going to have a symbol of God leading the way to conquer the land. Remember, Vayibid so Aaron, but now we're going to do it the right way. And in light of that, if you look again at the opening line, Moshe gathers everyone together. The whole Edan tells him, "Eila hadvarim asher tziva Hashem lasot otam." Now, in simple pshat, Eila hadvarim means these are the things. What is pasuk Aleph referring to? Okay, let's keep reading. Okay, Sheshet yamim taseh malacha. 6 days you can do work. On the 7th day is set aside a Shabbat for God. Okay, you can't do anyone doing work on that day will be put to death. Okay, don't burn fire anywhere you are on Shabbat. And then Moshe tells Adat B'Yisrael again, Zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem lemor, kum itchem truma l'Hashem kol nediv lev, etc. Donate for the Mishkan. So in light of this complex opening, okay, what is Elad Dvarim referring to in simple pshat? In other words, what are the two possibilities? Is it referring to Shabbat or is it referring to the Mishkan?
Both.
If you have to pick
He
between one of
said it
them.
twice. He says it twice. So one refers to Shabbat and one refers to Mishkan. Why?
So if I
Why
go
does
in
it
order,
be different?
It's a
there's another
separate
Dibur where Moshe
paragraph.
speaks again. But
It's a
if
separate paragraph. It
it's a
surely,
separate paragraph, so
the-
it seems like it's Shabbat. The problem is,
Right.
these are the things that God is commanding to do, la'asot otam. And here is what you can't do. But
Why?
God's
תעשה מלאכה. You have the verb תעשה. ששת ימים תעשה מלאכה. And
that's when you have to
referring
work.
like that.
You can work 6 days a week, but this is leading up to not doing work on Shabbat. In other words, Pasuk Bet and Gimel refers to Shabbat, but not doing work on Shabbat, to the point of capital punishment if you do that.
But it's positive.
An
יהיה
example
לכם
of what we can't do on
קודש.
Shabbat.
But the melacha here is making the Mishkan. So this
No, it's Elad Dvarim Asher La'asot Otam has to be the Mishkan. Why? In
Why?
other words, I want to read Pasuk Bet and Gimel parenthetical. In other words, Elad Dvarim, which God's commanding you to do them. Remember the word La'asot Otam. We'll see how important that word is in a minute. And then God says, "Is that the Shir Tziva Hashem Lemor to do this? Kum mitchem, all the different things we'll see in a second. B'kol chacham lev b'chem yavo v'yasu et kol Shir Tziva Hashem." Should come and do. And then we have a whole list of the things we have to do at the Mishkan, etc. And then they come and do it. And then when we get to the actual building of the Mishkan coming up, just take a quick look. Look at all the parshiot. In fact, I'm going to open out just a better chumash, a different chumash. Open up where are we? I want a regular chumash here we go. Not Devarim, I want to open up Shemot. Shemot. Move second. Here. Lamed Hey. It's from Lamed Vav now. Once we get to Parshat, in the middle of Parshat Vayakel, V'asa b'tzalel, v'yasu kol chacham lev, look at every parshiah. Vayas Yuriot. Vayas et Akrashim. Got it? What's next? Perek Lamed Zayin. See what's going to happen? Vayas Betzalel et Aaron. Vayas et Ashulchan. Vayas et Menorah. Okay? Vayas et Mizbeach. If that wasn't enough, Lamed Chet. Vayas et Mizbach Olah. Vayas et Akior. Vayas et Chatzer. Catching on? And then we have the summary. And then Asubite started Shrai Bakodesh, okay, Vayasat Eifod, Vayasat Neshoam, Vayasat Achoshen, and then everything is what do you call it? Here's what's one. Batechel Kol Avodat Mishkan. See, like creation, Batechel be finished. Vayasu b'nei Socher Shitzam Shekin Asu. Isn't that a giveaway? The opening line of Vayakel Elad Rim Yashir Tziva Shem Lasot Otam is the introduction to the whole unit of Vayakel Pekudei from chapter 35 to 40.
But that's the key verb. What verb would you like them to use? The la'asot is such a common verb in Hebrew. I don't know. Like there is no other option.
I'm saying there's so much of an accent of hiding. Here's what you need to do, and the whole thing coming up is building the Mishkan. Then the question comes up: why is God parenthetically mentioning Shabbat before building the Mishkan? Well, give me the simple reason why.
I think so.
Nikki?
I think it's because it's so important that you want to put if you put it at the end of 2 chapters of talking, it loses its importance. I think the fact that you start with it tells you that Ad Khan,
Okay. I'll go in that direction, but I want to give a real simple technical thing. Pretend you're living in a Jewish neighborhood. You're remodeling your house, okay?
Yep.
And your contractor says, for the next 3 months, it's going to take 3 months to do the construction.
Yeah.
So you sign a contract, but in your contract, what's it say? This has to be done within 3 months, otherwise the penalty, etc. But you can't do any construction work on this house on Saturday because of my religious whatever it is. And in the contract it says you have to do this project. Here's what you need to do. but you can't work on Saturday. I said you can work 6 days, you can't work on Saturday. You don't have to work, but you have to get it done by a certain time. What I'm getting at is the main commandment is you need to build the Mishkan. Here's what you're commanded to do to build the Mishkan. But before I begin the work, I'm going to parenthetically mention Shabbat.
Does it say anywhere that they didn't work on Shabbat? They didn't. Does it say anywhere in Chumash that they actually didn't build the Mishkan on Shabbat? Or this is like it seems to me like a midrash, like maybe they did work on Shabbat. We don't know that unless you have a pasuk.
So tell me,
that says it.
why are we bringing an example of burning fire on Shabbat?
Rabbi, isn't it also tied into the idea that the 39 malachot are based on the building of, like, we know what's in the 39 malachot because that's the malachot that they did in building the Mishkan.
I'll take what Marty's saying. Chazal are going to do what Marty's doing. They're going to learn from these more than that, not just the Shabbat technicality, but from the juxtaposition here, we're going to learn what you can't do on Shabbat. What we call the 39 malachot. I'll share with you in a minute a beautiful idea of Rav Yoel Ben Nun here. But I'm saying at the simplest level, it's just telling you, even though I'm commanding you to build a Mishkan, you can't work on Shabbat. Now, why would I think you could? Because in the Ten Commandments it says, work 6 days a week. Your work. Someone might think that even though you can't do your work, you can do work for God on Shabbat. As sometimes we actually do in the temple later on, in the daily Tamid. But building the Mishkan, Chazal understand, is forbidden on Shabbat. Now, but at a much deeper level, this has a lot to do with, there's something much deeper here, and the deeper meaning and the connection is in light of what happened in Truma Tetzaveh. Keep that in mind. We're going to go back and see the whole unit, and then we'll see why Chazal understand it has to be, what's the special connection between Shabbat and Croatia. Now, one quick thing before I forget, I have to open the door because it's boiling hot here. We might have some noise from the house, but I need a cross breeze. What I want to do is, I want to show you something from creation. Remember we made a big deal about the verb vayas, that what we have to do? Now, the Mishkan in Truma Tetzaveh began vasita, vasita, vasita. There's a command that you have to make, vasuli mikdash, you have to build it, mikdash, we have to do. And then we do, God commands and we do. If you remember the story of creation, let me share my screen real fast. If I go back and go the story of creation, where are we? Stop the share. Okay, stop share. Just a quick reminder. This is an old source sheet from ages ago. No, not that one. This one, here we go. Tell me if you see it. You see Perek Aleph and Breshit?
No,
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
it says
Okay,
you're
okay.
sharing the screen, but that's it.
Share and Breshit. Here we go. Now you see it?
No.
This started screen sharing, but you're not sharing.
Strange.
Now we see it. Now we
Now you
see
see
it.
it. Okay, there's a bit of a delay. Am I plugged in? I'm plugged in. Okay. It goes like this. Remember every day of creation. I have it highlighted here. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Every day of creation begins with a divine command, Vayomer Elokim, command, followed by an execution, Vayor. Now, there's always different verbs that Chumash uses for how God does things. Either it just happens, okay? Yor Vayor, happen. Or sometimes God does things, probably 7 times. Vayomer Elokim, Yirakia b'toch hamayim, v'yimavdil ben, Vayas Elokim et harakia. Here's the first one. God commands and God does. How about day 3? God says Yikavu hamayim, etc., and then it happens. Vayichen. On day 4, how does it begin? Okay. God says Yimor barkia shamayim, and what happens in pasuk Tetzayin? Vayas Elokim et shnei morot agdolim. God commands and God does. Day 5, God says Vayomer Elokim yishutzu hamayim, and then here we have Vayivra. God creates early, and then on day 6, God says Totzi haaretz nefesh chaya, and then Vayas Elokim et kol chayat. Etc. And most of the time, in fact, when God makes man, and then again we go from Vayas to Vayivra. But what's happening is what's called hu amar ve'hu tziva v'yamod. God commands, and God executes the command, and then God evaluates. Remember, and then God blesses. Remember, God bless. So
Yes.
remember, God commands, God executes, God evaluates, okay, and sees it's good, and then he blesses. If I go back to what we just did before, if I go back to the there's one interesting which is not our topic today, when God says Tacher Steshe, etc. And instead of God doing it, the land does it. That's called Chet Haaretz, but that's all Shira and Breshit. That's a very special Yotzei Medaklal, exception to the rule. But in general, God commands and God does, and God evaluates, and everything God does is good. Now, what happened in the Mishkan? God commands, and we execute, because we became partners in God's creation. So already we see a parallel between the story of creation and Shabbat. But where does Chumash highlight this in Parshat Pekudei? After all these, I'm sorry, you were right here before. No, stop the share. Go back to my Chumash. Chumash, here we go. In
You
Parak
you
Lamed
skip
Tet.
Shabbat. You skip Shabbat in creation, where he has Asa also there.
Oh yeah,
Vayishvot
sure, Brian Asot.
melachto
Perfect,
asher
very good,
asa,
Torah. Yeah,
whatever.
perfect. That Asher Baichosh Members B'chol Tzvaam. Okay, Machem B'chol Ash. What's the last line? Okay, Vayvarachem et Yom HaShabbat ki bo Shabbat Hashem Yikod Melach Asher Bara
Bara
Asher
Elohim
Asot.
lasot. Yeah,
So yeah, Bara and Asiya all together. Now,
right.
when the Mishkan's over, what happens? They put the whole thing together. Now we're in chapter 29. Here. Vayasu b'nei Yisrael kosher. I'm sorry. Vatechel kol avodat Mishkan Moed, like by Chulu. And b'nei Yisrael kosher tziva Hashem ken asu. They bring the Mishkan to Moshe, and what happens? Vayar Moshe et kol hamacha v'nei asu to kosher tziva Hashem ken asu. Vayvarech to Moshe. So Moshe evaluates. It's exactly like God said to do, and Moshe blesses them, blesses their work. So we have a very similar, presentation. There's a lot of parallels here to creation. Now, what I want to explain today, why the Mishkan and creation go hand in hand, why the need for it, and why we're going to tie together creation as well as revelation as far as Har Sinai. We spend a lot of time showing how the Mishkan reminds us of what happened to Har Sinai. I want to show you visiting the Mishkan reminds us of creation as well, and try to explain how the two are connected. That's the goal of today's share. What's called they didn't advertise the correct title. I mean the full title. They just said the series title. Let's go back to my source sheet. Where's my title? Bum bum. I think it says a place and time. Let me see if I have that right. Here we are. Yeah, the Mishkan Shabbat, a place and time. Anyone understand my pun? Maybe. Okay. A place, all right, in time. Okay, no, it's the Mishkan is a place in time, but both of them remind us of our Sinai, and we'll see both of them are going to remind us of creation. I want to make one probably the most important distinction. When Chumash tells us the story of creation, is it to tell you and teach you that God created or why He created? You understand the difference between the two? Do I need to know, or I'll give you more, do I need to know that we're chosen or why we're chosen when we get to Har Sinai? Right. Now, same things on fast days. If this was Tisha B'Av a week ago, are remembering what happened or why it happened? Are remembering that the temple was destroyed?
Why?
Or why was it destroyed?
Always why?
When I visit God in the temple to remember Har Sinai, do I need to remember that we're chosen? Or what's the purpose of our chosenness? If I remember creation, I'm remembering that God created to believe that He did out of belief so I can praise Him, or what do I do? Why did God make man in the image of God? And what did God do every day of creation? God, remember, planned, He acted and evaluated. Remember we talked about we said plan, act, reflect way back, par, P-A-R. God plans, God acts, and God reflects. We have to keep up to par. So I need to remember that my ability to be creative, because what's God doing? God every day makes something that didn't exist before. That creativity of making something it's creating something that didn't exist before, that becomes the idea of Shabbat. So man has the ability to be creative, not just thanking God for that ability, but not just saying thank you, but acting thank you, and understanding you have the ability to be creative, but to use your creativity properly. I think that's going to be one of the key purposes of both the Mishkan and Shabbat. And we'll see how the melachot of Shabbat are going to tie into it. Now, let me go back
Before
to,
you go on,
yeah, sure.
is the order of the items in Vayakel Pekude, is it a direct reprise of what it says when the commands
Oh, so
originally
that's
given
exactly our
in
source sheet today.
Shemot
That's exactly what we
Tetzaveh?
need now. Okay. Here, I'm going to review first what we had before. Okay. In Truma Tetzaveh, in chapters 25 to 31, we opened with the purpose, Va'asu li mikdash v'shachanti. Remember Va'asi, Va'asu. Right? Now, is that a commandment, build a mikdash so that I can bring my Shekhinah, or build a mikdash so that my Shekhinah can return? You know what I'm saying? If this is before Chet Egel, then to keep the Shekhinah from leaving, I need to build a mikdash, a Mishkan. If it's after Chet Egel, I need to build a Mishkan to bring the Shekhinah back. That's part of the Machloket, Rashi and Ramban. Now, but we have the opening commandment. Then we have, in chapter 25, we begin with the Aron and Kaporet, the vessels that in the Kodesh, and then in the Kodesh Kodeshim in the Kodesh, and then the Shulchan and Menorah. Remember? Chapter 26, we have the tent, we have the covering, the blankets that cover, then the poles that hold up the tent, the blanket, and the prochet, the divider inside. That's chapter 26. Chapter 27, we have the courtyard with the mizbech and in the middle, and the fence around it, and the curtains around it, called the chatzer. Then we have the big day kuna, chapter 28, the 7th-day inaugural sermon, chapter 29, the Yolat Tamid, remember? Then we had the summary psukim, remember the grand finale, the Shekhinah, and then we had the leftovers, starting with the Mizbach Toret that was left out. Remember we had the Hoshir on Mizbach Toret, protection from the Shekhinah, and that was all the one big dibor. And then we have 6 short dibors, totaling 7, where Machzit HaShekel was the first one, then the Kior, then the anointing oil, remember, the Shemen HaMishcha, then the Ktoret itself, then Betzalel the builder, and then Shabbat. And we ended with Shabbat. Now, all of these, almost all these elements, except for the 7-day inaugural ceremony, which is saved for Parshat Tzav, everything's repeated in Vayakov Kudei, but in a different order. Now, but when we studied the Shekhinah unit, the Torah unit, right, we show how that matched up. Remember, all the leftovers were in the same order as the presentation. Remember the Mizbach Toret, right, belong with the vessels inside the Mishkan. The Machzit HaShekel was used for the Adanim, to make the silver sockets to hold up the Krashim. The Kior is next to the Mizbach Olah and the Chatzer. Remember that messed up? The Shemen HaMishcha was to anoint the Kohanim and use it 7 days of Miluim. And the Ktoret Tamid is what's brought daily on the Mizbech Ktoret, just like the Korban Tamid is brought daily on the main Mizbech. In other words, we saw the parallel between them, but that was a thematic presentation, because about what the function of the Mishkan is. When I'm actually building it, now we put everything together. So here, this was the original summary. Remember, we had now I'm sorry. Now we can summarize what we have in Vayakov Kudei. We'll go through it again. First, we have Shabbat. Instead of Shabbat beginning, go back to our first little thing. Here, Shabbat was the conclusion, the 7th parsha. Here, Shabbat is the beginning. Now, we're going to read the different Shabbatot and see how they're connected. Now, what's the next one? First, we have Shabbat. Then we have, Then we have what items to build. We'll see how many items. We'll see Rav Yoel's part in a minute. Then we begin after appointing Betzalel the builder. Chapter 36, we get the tent. Then we get the vessels inside. Then the Chatzer with Mizbech Olah with the Kior. And then the Big Day Kuna, and then putting it all together. Now, what I did here, I made a chart for you. This is your question. I try to make it so it's to follow. On the left column here, I have the chapter in Truma Tetzaveh. It's in 25 to 31, the chapter on the left. And here in green on the top, I have the chapter in Vayakov Kudei. So in chapter 35, are we here? In chapter 35, I'm beginning. Let me get a little marker here. I wanted to be able to draw something here. I know what I'm going to do. Put you guys on the side. That's better. And annotate and okay, let me get a drawing line here. Okay, so here in the green, I'm going to have the chapter. So in chapter 35, I begin with Shabbat, which was in chapter 31, and then Betzalel, which was earlier in chapter 31. I'm working almost backwards. I begin with the tent, remember? And now everything's back in order. And then the vessels, but now the Mishpach Torah is back where it belongs inside the Kodesh. And then after that, I'm going to have, I don't need these anymore. Erase, clear all drawings, okay? Then I'm going to continue. In chapter 30, I have the Chatzer, and now the Kior is back with the Mizbech Olah, etc. Okay? And then we have the Bidei Kuna, and then we put the whole thing together, and then we have the Shekhinah at the end of chapter 40. We'll go through it in the Chumash. Now, so it's reorganized, and everyone knows the famous midrash of why Betzalel is called Betzalel, because he says usually what you do, you don't buy a refrigerator and then build a house for the refrigerator. First you build a house and then you put the refrigerator in. It's like, in Chelm, don't build the roof and no, that's a bad example. So I'll give you the example I like to use. I'll stop to share for a minute. If anyone ever had either the headache or the opportunity to build their own house, people look forward to it. And then, so the first thing you have to do is first, besides the money side, you sit with the architect. And before you have anything besides, forget the finances, the first thing the architect asks you, describe for me how you live your day-to-day life. So it's, how many children you have? You plan to order out food every day, or you're going to have a kitchen you work in? You're going to have, every day, you have 3 meals a day in your house, or you can have guests over. You're going to have a library. Do you need a TV room? How do you live your day-to-day life? And based on your day-to-day life, how you function in your daily life, based on that, he'll design the house. Based on that, decide how big the kitchen is, how much room there is, how many bedrooms, based on the function, you build that. So Trumat Tetzaveh talks about the function of the Shekhinah. It's once the house once you have your blueprints ready to build it, you go to the builder. The builder couldn't care less what you do in your house. The builder does what's functional. I mean, what in order building. So first he builds the structure, and then he builds the rooms. I told you, I don't need a fire extinguisher in my house. I need a fire extinguisher in case of emergency, but I need a wall. Right? I need a lights, for seeing. But when the electrician puts in, or when the plumber puts everything in, he doesn't make a difference. He's going to put the electricity system together with the fire extinguisher system. It's all the same to him whether you use it or not, because it's all part in the building plans. So the builder is very practical, and therefore Betzalel built it in a logical order. Now that's why, from a technical point of view, before you start building, tell the contractor you can't work on Saturday. But at a deeper level, if I go back and see what Shabbat is, that's when you get the depth. Why? Let's go back and read what Shabbat was about in the first unit, okay? Remember, the concluding unit was Vasu Midas for Shachanti. What's Shabbat all about? I mean, why Shabbat the trailer? Remember, from chapters 25 to 31, one big Mishkan unit with 7 diburs. The 7 dibur brings Shabbat. Let's go back and read Shabbat. So let's read it first in a regular Chumash, and then we'll read it on a formatted. So let's read Shabbat. I'll do an English Hebrew one, make life easier for you. Let's open up Exodus 31. Okay? Verse 11 or 12 here. Verse 12. V'yomer Hashem Moshe lemor. Vata daber el bnei Yisrael lemor. After all the men, ach et Shabbat tishmoru. What's ach mean? That's in light of the Mishkan. After we just had, 5-6 chapters about building the Mishkan. Ach means despite. Remember, this is asking Rory's question. Even though I told you to build the Mishkan, oh, by the way, ach, keep Shabbat. So if this was in the middle of nowhere, fine. But because it's the trailer of the Mishkan, it makes a lot of sense that it's relating to the Mishkan. So even though I told you to build the Mishkan, vasita, but still keep my Shabbat. Why? Ki oti beni u'benechem. It's a sign between me and you, for all generations, to know ki ani Hashem mekadishchem. Now, where's that coming from? No, I need an oath that ani Hashem mekadishchem. Where's this phrase coming from? Ani Hashem mekadishchem. Remember Mamad Har Sinai? Batem tulim mamlechet kohanim v'kadosh.
Kohanim v'goy kadosh.
Ani Hashem el kasher tzeitichem me'eretz Mitzrayim. Brit Sinai is Ani Hashem mekadishchem. Kadoshim tu ki kadosh ani Hashem elokechem. What happened to Brit Sinai? We entered a covenant. We didn't receive a present. We took a commitment to be God's people. we entered a brit, and we're going to trace in a minute the development of the idea of covenant in Chumash. We're going to go from Brit Keshet to Brit Milah to Brit Sinai, and all the Britot are going to have a Brit, Beinu Bein, between two parties, and with a purpose, and the Brit will have an oath, will have a sign of the covenant. It will be a rainbow, it might be circumcision, and Har Sinai will be Shabbat. In other words, Shabbat is not a sign that God created. If I follow the psukim here, Shabbat is a reminder of our covenantal commitment in Har Sinai. It's our reminder that God set us aside to serve Him. Now keep that in mind because it gets confusing in a minute. But ladat, to know in the biblical sense, remember, to have a deep connection, that I'm Hashem who sets up. Now, because Shabbat is a reminder of the Brit. Now, what do we refer to as Luchot HaBrit? What's written on Luchot HaBrit? What we call the 10 Commandments or the 10 statements. Now, why the first two statements are part of the Brit? Why? Because I'm your boss. And not to serve other gods. It makes sense that's in the contract. And not to carry God's name in vain is important because we're chosen to make God's name great. But why is Shabbat in the contract? Because Shabbat is our weekly reminder of the contract. As I'm trying to explain why Shabbat is right up front in the 10 Commandments, it's not just one of the mitzvot. It relates directly to the covenant because Shabbat is our weekly reminder of the covenant. Then we have about honoring parents, and then we talked about the Ben Am L'Chaviro side, which are universal, not to kill, steal, adultery, etc. But we can't even think about it. That was Lo Tachmod. But if I'm looking at the first half of the 10 Commandments, the between God and man side, then Shabbat is important there because it's not just one mitzvah, but it's the mitzvah that reminds us of our chosenness. Now we need to know why. Why specifically Shabbat? Now, once Shabbat is an Od Brit, then what happens? If let's say a wedding ring is an example of an Od Brit. If someone gets into a fight with their spouse and takes their wedding ring or band and throws it into the Dead Sea or something like that, or maybe down to whatever it is, they throw it wherever they are, okay? What's that a sign of? What is that person saying through that action? Right? That they don't identify with the covenant. So if someone intentionally desecrates the Sabbath day, in essence, what's he saying? I don't identify with the Brit, with the covenant. And therefore, what's the consequence? Ushmartem et Shabbat, ki kodesh hilachem. It's Shabbat set aside for you. Remember? Therefore, mechalaleh motumat. Those who desecrate the Sabbath day, it's capital punishment. Ki kol sebo melacha v'nichratan v'ashib mikar b'am Yisrael. Okay, that's a chiyuv karet, to cut off from mikar b'ama. You cut off from the brit. It's almost a consequence. Remember, karet goes with the word brit. Now, instead, you can work 6 days a week. This is a correct quote for the 10 Commandments. But remember, the 10 Commandments, it doesn't mention punishment. 10 Commandments, it just says to remember the Sabbath day, right? And to work 6 days a week, you can't work on Shabbat. But it doesn't say what the punishment is. Here is the first time we have a chiyuv karet because now it's an old brit. You can work 6 days a week. The seventh day you can't work. Right? Now, V'shomru is not a story; it's a commandment. No, it's just repeating the commandment. But Israel must keep the Sabbath day. Let's see the word asiyah all through this whole section. Lasot, lasot, lasot. Just like the Mishkan. Lasot at Shabbat lo tam b'rit olam. You make Shabbos, like you make Pesach. You're not supposed to do work, but you make Shabbat in a figurative sense of the word. Am Yisrael has to keep Shabbat, to make Shabbat for all generations. What's Brit Olam mean? Har Sinai is a Brit Olam. It's a reminder of a Brit Olam because all the Britot will be Brit Kesher, Brit Milah, and Brit Sinai are going to be a Brit Olam. Beini u'bein Yisrael oti la'olam. The same lashon we'll see by Brit Milah and Brit Kesher. Why? Why is Shabbat now? It's not what does Shabbat remind us of, but why is Shabbat a fitting Brit, a Brit Sinai? Why? Just like God separated one day of the week and made it special. Right? God separated one nation from the other nations and made it special. Remember, it's just like God separated you from the other nations and sanctified you or designated you to serve Him. But for the sake of those nations, God separated one day of the week from the 7 and made it special to have an impact on the other 6 days of the week. Right? I think this pasuk is not just explaining what the purpose of Shabbat is, but why Shabbat is a fitting Od Brit for Brit Sinai. Now, I want to prove to you that it's an oath brit for Brit Sinai in a minute from where Shabbat's mentioned in after the laws of Shemitah in Bar B'chukotai. We'll see it in a minute. In fact, let me jump there right now on the source sheet. I want to show you, I'm going to trace for you on the source sheet this theme of Brit ever since creation. Where are we? We need our source sheet again. And here, the idea of an oath Brit. First of all, Kedusha in 3 realms we're all familiar with. Remember? The first time we have Kedusha is Shabbat in the realm of time. Remember? In Breshit. That's the only time you have the word Kedusha in Breshit other than Ekdesha, but that's say Daf Yomi coming up soon. But yeah, no, that's a story in Breshit. But in general, the idea of Kedusha in the positive sense is only Shabbat in the story of creation. In Shemot, the burning bush, we have Kedushat Makom, sanctity of a place where the place is special. Notice we have Kedusha in the realm of time in creation, in the realm of space, in the realm of people. The first time we have it by coming out of Egypt, Shekol B'chor, and then we get to Har Sinai, where it become a Mamlechet Kohen Kadosh. The best example is on Yom Kippur, where all 3 come together. We have the Kohen Gadol, Kedushat Adam, in the Kodesh Kodeshim, Kedushat Makom, the highest level, and Shabbat Shabbaton in the realm of time. We have all 3 coming together. Now, just to show you the wording, I want to just remember just real quickly the parallels between the Rainbow Covenant, Circumcision Covenant, and Mount Sinai Covenant. Okay, and what are the key phrases we find? So first, God's name Elokim. Vayvarech Elokim et Noach v'et banav v'yemer pru'avu. We always have a pru'avu in the background. Keep that in mind. Right after the flood, you have pru'avu, and creation you have it, but right before the 7 Noachite laws, or right before the Rainbow Covenant, you have the 7 Noachite laws, which begin and end with pru'avu. Okay. Then Elokim tells Noach, Ani hinimi kimet briti itchem. I'm going to establish my brit with you. Without getting all the details, there won't be another flood. And here's the key phrase. Vakimoti, remember this phrase. Vakimoti et briti itchem. That's the key phrase. I'm going to establish my brit with you. There won't be another Mabul. No, it's God's promising no more starting over. No more starting over creation again. And then Elokim says, Zot ota brit asher nitem benu Menachem. So we have an ot brit. Benu ben. Et kashin atati ba'anan. The rainbow is not the covenant, but the sign covenant. Vaital od brit benu ben haaretz, and it's worse to say brit olam. It says here it's a brit. I didn't put the pasuk here, but I'll open up in a chumash in a minute. But it's a brit olam. It's a brit olam. How come I don't have it here? I'll find it in a minute. I'll open up the psukim in a minute. I should have done a full version. But before I'll go back to there in the regular chumash in Brit Milah, the same idea. God says, I'll make a brit between me and you. And then Elokim talks to Abram and says, Pru Arvu again, Vifreiti otcha b'mod mod. And then, Vakimoti et briti, benu beinecha, the same phrase. Ubein zacharecha dortem l'brit olam. Dodach Elohim, I'm setting aside land of Israel to be your God. And then, you have to do circumcision. Vayela od brit, benu beinechem. And I'm just going to open up a chumash and show you all the psukim inside. Then we'll see the tochacha inside. Let me stop the share. That was too short a version. Let me go back to the regular chumash inside and show them to you. Again, I'm going to go to the psukim again in Bereshit and show you the obvious parallel between how we develop a theme from creation to God picking Avram Avinu to Har Sinai. And what's the logic behind it? First, we'll see the technical side, then we'll see the logic behind it. So again, we'll go back to chapter 9 in Genesis, Bible, Genesis chapter 9. Here we go. Chapter 9. Okay. God, Elokim talks to Noach and tells him Purvu, the 7 Noachite laws, Vatem Purvu. And then Elokim tells Noach, I'm going to make a brit with you, bro, with you and all creation, etc. Vakimoti et briti, lo yikaret b'mabul, lo yimabul, that was the brit. And zod ot brit asher niten lachem, etc. The dorot olam, that's the word olam, et kashen tabi anan, vayta lo ot brit benu ben aretz, vaya b'nei kavod v'chulei, v'zcharti et briti benu benechem, v'bein kol nefesh chaya, lo yimabul, vayta kesh b'anan, briti, lizkor brit olam, here we go. Bein Elokim v'bein kol nefesh chaya, v'yomel Noach, zot ot brit asher kimoti benu ben kol basar, al haaretz. So you see the repetition, Beinu Bein, God's name Elokim, a Brit Olam, and an Ot Brit. Got that? That's classic. Now, God promises I can't start over again. So what can God do when things go bad if he can't start over again? If you can't start over again, you have to fix it. Things go bad again, Migdal Bavel, etc. And then what's the next big story in Chumash? Okay. If God can't start over again, I need to put something into the process of creation, some safety net, for someone to be that example who can be an example of learning from mistakes and fixing things when they go wrong. Which I want to give as a background for God picking Avram Avinu. So I look at the by the way, this Elohim speaks here to Noach. Okay. If you follow Breshit from this point right here in chapter 9, Elohim doesn't speak again until chapter 17. Got that? It's the next time Elohim is going to speak in Chumash. Yud Kevavke will speak. But Elohim doesn't speak until chapter 17. And first he introduces himself beautifully when Avram is 99. Avram is 99. Hashem, who's been talking to Avram ever since Lech Lecha, tells Avram, Ani El Shaddai. First time God's name is El Shaddai here. Hitelech lefanev yatamim, parallel to the Noach story again. What you need to be. Benad briti beni ubenecha. By Avram falls on his face. By daber ito Elokim lemor. Elokim now speaks to Avram. The first time Elokim spoken since Brit Keshet. I'm going to make a brit with you, and you're going to be the mentor for other nations. They'll learn from you. You have the name changed from Avram to Abraham, and then Vrifreiti Otcha again, Pruvuthim, and then again the same phrases, Vakimotit Briti Beni Ubenecha, Ubezacharecha Odam the Brit Olam. See the phrases? And what's the Brit? You'll be my God, I'll be your God, you'll be my people. Remember, the Brit of the circumcision covenant is the Ben about circumcision. The Brit is, I'm your God, you're my people. Let's call Lachad Elohim, Batem Tu Dilam. We'll see later on. And it's a Brit Olam, our reminder of our internal commitment to be God's people is circumcision, because we have to keep it going. You can give lots of reasons why circumcision is a fitting reminder of the covenant. I think the simplest reason is because it's a eternal commitment. To make it going, you have to have children and educate children and be committed forever. Okay? Now, it goes back to creation, but that's the whole idea of life in creation. We'll go back to Breshit in a minute. Okay. Then I'm setting aside the land of Israel as a vehicle through which I can fulfill the covenant, and there I'll be your God, because you'll be a nation representing me. And then Elohim tells Abram, you keep my brit. And this is the Menachem, Menachem kol zachar. Vayelo brit beni ubenechem, and ben shmonet yamim, himod imo, etc. And then finally, what's the last line? Baitab bivriti bivsarchem, the brit olam. So you see the concept of brit olam. Now,
you have the karet here also, v'nichrata nefesh ha'im me'amea.
Of karet, which makes sense now.
That's right.
Because you have karet, whenever there's a covenant, when you don't stand up to the covenant, you're chayv karet. That's why the two mitzvot say that you're chayv karet for not doing them will be Pesach, and which is Brit Ben Abtarim, and Milah, which is Brit Milah. Now, if I jump to Parshat Bahar, which Pshat was at Har Sinai, if I go back to where's my Chumash? If I go back to go forward to chapter 25 in Vayikra, we have the laws of Shemitah. It relates to Shabbat for sure. Cycles of 6 and 7, the whole Shemitah cycle. When that's all over, we have the Dibrot again. In a quick review, okay. Kili b'nei Yisrael vadim avadai mesher tzeitu otam eretz Mitzrayim ani Hashem Elokechem. For some reason, the chapter divided where it shouldn't have been divided. And then God continues, Lo tasvechem elilim. We have the first commandment, now the second commandment. Okay, Ki ani Hashem Elokechem. We have Shabbat and Mikdash coming together now, ani Hashem. And then, if you follow my laws, and God will reward you, etc. And then let's skip now to, I'll help you defeat your enemies. Ufaniti alechem, listen to the wording, v'ifreiti etchem b'irbeiti etchem, v'akimoti et briti etchem. Sound familiar? V'akimoti et briti? The same phrase we had by Brit Keshet and Brit Milah. Now we have it by Brit Sinai. V'achatem yashan nosham v'yashan, etc. V'natati mishkeni b'tochechem, here's the giveaway. V'talachti b'tochechem, remember Talech lefanev yatamim by Brit Milah. V'iti lechem d'Elohim, Brit Milah, v'atem tu li la'am, which will be Brit Sinai. Got it? Ani Hashem lechem asher tzeitti etchem eretz Mitzrayim yo'od lechem avadim. I took you and gave you freedom to be my nation. If you don't listen, boy, you're in trouble. But you can see the same wording. I mean, I have to go back to, let me go back to my regular source sheet. I'm just showing you there's this progression of covenant that goes from Brit Kesed, Brit Milah to Brit Sinai, because God wants a nation forever to always be on the map whose destiny not will work, it's up to us, but our eternal destiny will be to be a nation representing God by being a nation, being not ideally a model nation, or at least a nation that learns from its mistakes and knows how to do tshuva, so other people can learn how to do tshuva in a best case scenario with good education. Now, so I need a reminder of that in the realm of space. That'll be the Mikdash, and also in the realm of time. So if I go back to the whole Mishkan unit in Trumat Tetzaveh, what's the beautiful conclusion of the whole? If God sets aside this edifice, this Mishkan or Mikdash, to remember our commitment to be God's people, to remember Brit Sinai, right? What's the trailer? Just like I have an edifice in the realm of space, Kedushat Makom, to remember Mamad Har Sinai, that commitment to be God's people, I need also in the realm of time, that'll be Shabbat, to remember Mamad Har Sinai. Not to remember what happened, but why it happened. To remember the purpose of your chosenness. At the same time, to remember that you're chosen to represent God by acting in a godly manner, by being creative. In other words, using your, not just taking out your creativity, using creativity to do good, and reflecting and making sure your creativity is going the right direction. So you work 6 days a week because God works 6 days a week. You rest on the seventh day to reflect like God did. So therefore, just like the Mishkan is going to remind us of creation as well as revelation, Shabbat reminds us of creation as well as revelation. And that's why Shabbat's in the Ten Commandments. Now, in light of that, it's super meaningful that Shabbat is right up front before we build the Mishkan. For sure is referring to the Mishkan, but as not just as a parenthetical, oh, by the way, you can't work on Saturday, as a thematic introduction, Shabbat overrides the Mishkan. Almost like, remember the Moadim on, I'll go back real quick to Vayikra. Where are we? How do I share my screen? Here we go. I want to go back to Vayikra 23. We just had the holidays. We didn't just have the holidays. We were a while back here. Vayikra 23. Remember the Modim? Tel b'nei Samatem Modei Hashem. That's coming up. Call them my Modim. Elam Madai. Parentheses. Work 6 days a week. You can't work on Shabbat. And then Elam Modei Hashem. But that's famous. The Ramban compares this to Vayakel. It says, for some reason, this is parenthetical. That this tells you that Shabbat overrides Yom Tov when the two come out at the same time. You can't do Ochel Nefesh on Yom Tov if it comes out on Shabbat. But the same kind of setup where our opening statement is, these are the Moadim, parentheses, Shabbat overrides, okay? And then these are the Moadim. We go on, read the Ramban on those Psukim, we have the same setup. Now let's go back to, oh my gosh, okay, actually before I forget, I have to show you Rabbi Benu's beautiful fort. If I open up this opening statement now, why Shabbat's so important. Now, Shabbat begins the Mishkan, and why is the first malacha, the example you can't do, is making fire to melt down metal, havara, because the first commandment will be, give me your gold, and they took the gold from Aaron to make the egel, but first you have to, melt it down. So the first you need to build, the first malacha you might need to do in the Mishkan is havara, and therefore havara is a great example for the Mishkan. Now, not to mention Havara and fire on Har Sinai and all the other imagery you have there. Now, everyone knows there's 39 melachot of Shabbat, correct? But why 39? But the rabbis don't say 39. What do the rabbis call it? The seventh parak, there's about melachot of Shabbat are Arbaim Chasar Achat. They're 40 minus 1. If you know your Mishnah, not everyone knows that Mishnah, I hope? We know Lamitet Melachot, but the Mishnah calls them Arbaim less 1, 40 less 1. Now why? Rabbi has this amazing fort. Let's take a look at it, and we'll do it together. I need the, I'll use this one. Okay. You need chapter 35. Okay. Everyone takes a minute. You can do it on your own. Here it says, etc. Now, okay. I'll make this bigger for a second. Here. Oh, made it too big. Okay. Verse 10. V'chol chacham lev bachem yavo v'yasu et kol asher tzivah Hashem. Everyone should come and do everything God commanded. Kol asher tzivah Hashem. Now, we have a list here starting from Pasuk Yud Aleph, Et Mishkan, etc. From Yud Aleph all the way till, let me show you where it goes to Pasuk Yud Tet. From Yud Aleph, from verse 11 to 19. There we go. That's the list of everything the Mishkan will be repeated over and over again. You'll see later a total of 7 times. But here's a list of everything in the Mishkan. Now, if you count up everything, take a second if you want. Maybe we'll take 1 minute and see what numbers you get. Count how many items are. No, it's count every et. You can do it maybe with a program. But from Yud Aleph to Yud Tet, count how many times you have the word et.
Probably 39.
What? No, don't
Probably
guess.
39.
Count them up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
We count them together. But count on your own. We'll see what people get. There should be a program that can do this. Probably Alatar could do that. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
You missed one.
You missed.
You missed.
Yeah, I missed it. I have a whole bunch. I forget. I have to do it with a word processor to highlight them. Maybe I'll do that real fast. Et. Well, that's a good idea. So I'll try that real fast. Open this up in Word. Where are we? We need to highlight from Yud Aleph to, that's enough here for here. Control C. Okay, keep counting in the meantime. I'm going to open up Word. Word, new document. Put that here.
Sounds like a gematria trick.
Yeah,
I
1
lost
second.
count. You moved the screen.
No, do you see my screen in Word now or not?
Yeah, but not the whole.
Here's the psukim. Okay.
But by moving the
Now, I
screen,
need
it
to
was
take-
impossible to count it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Oh, you have to, I hope you had a chumash. We'll let the computer work for us, okay? I would take the word et, Control C. Wait, I want to cut out the last psukim. V'yitzukah b'nai Yisrael, get rid of those. Okay. We're going to take this document and take the word et and replace et. Let's see. Control C, okay. And we're going to edit.
We don't see your Word document.
Okay, 1 second. I'm just doing this for a second. Find et and replace with. I'll show you this in a second.
You also need ve'et.
Yeah, et, and then write the same thing, et, and more. 1 second. No, I'll just count et. I'll do like that, et. I'm going to do this, et. I'll make it, I'll do it like this. There we go. No, that's not going to work. Et. Okay. See what happens. Replace all. Okay. No, that didn't work. We need to do that. Never mind. Okay, did anyone count? I'll just stop the
No,
show.
well, where's the screen? You didn't.
Oh, you don't have Chumashim at home? I'm sorry.
Oh,
my
we
mis-
should get your own
Okay. So we'll do it together. My mistake. Okay. Basically, you count them up. You can check later on. Up until here. So we'll count together. 1 second. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3. You follow my thing? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 5, 36, here, 37, 38. Okay, perfect. We're at 38. And now,
39, Ved Bigdei Asrat.
the B'dei Asrat Kodesh is 39,
Right.
followed by, now, that's the header for the B'dei Kuna, and this includes, right? No, it's at B'dei Asrat Kodesh, which includes two types, B'dei Kodesh Haron Kei, B'dei Banot Lachaim. So either I count the first half of Pasuk Yotet and I get 39, or at the second half of the plus, I can get 40.
Okay.
So that's how we get 40 chaser achat. Okay, that's if you hold the bidei asra is referring to the bidei kuna, not to the covers, but that's a whole different machloket on the parshanim. So he says if there's 39 different things that were made in the Mishkan, or 40 less one, so that's where the rabbis get the number 39 from. Now go fill in the blanks. In other words, it's like a zero-sum game, like the 613 mitzvot. No one counted and got to 613. They start knowing you have to get to 613, and then they go fill in go find them and start counting. So same thing. So Rav Yoel claims that the number 39 comes from here, or 40 minus 1, and we find malachot to match the building the Mishkan. Now I try to give a thematic reason why Shabbat and Mishkan are connected, because Chumash is screaming they're connected, because it's the trailer of the Mishkan unit, it's the header of the new unit. It's a reminder, and Shabbat is the Od Brit of Brit Sinai, and the whole idea that I need a reminder of my commitment to be God's people in the realm of space and the realm of time. It makes sense that they're connected thematically, and that's why we have a beautiful custom in Am Yisrael. You go to shul once a week on Shabbat. If the shul is a Mikdash Ma'at, the only time to go, the people have a custom only go to shul on Shabbat, not during the week. So I have a melamed zchut on them. At least they should go on Shabbat. That's good. So if the shul is a Mikdash Ma'at, that's supposed to be in jest, but there's something good about it. Now, there's something much deeper I wanted to get to, and that has to do with the melachot that we do. Now, we did this way back. I'll just review it, and maybe I'll dedicate shit to it next week, part of it. What do we do in the Mishkan? In other words, remember that we decided it was a model home. Okay? So there's certain things in the Mishkan which are like your home. Remember, you have a candelabra, you have light, you have a room, and you have light, you have food. You have a kitchen where you cook meat.
You have a table.
You have a table. But basically, you think. But more than that,
You have a kior to wash.
it's like your model home, and therefore you have to bring the Mishkan to your home, like you take the sukkah to your house, kind of idea. You don't leave the sukkah, you bring it into your home. Now, but there's something I think much more basic. If the whole purpose of creation is to remember the man's B'Tselem Elokim, and if we follow the Rambam's definition that Tzelem Elokim is recognizing, even though you're similar to the animal, you're different than an animal. And that's why God makes man and animal on the same day, but with two separate tiburs. That was the whole discussion when we did creation. But if man is unique in his creativity, and man has to recognize when he looks at the animal kingdom, he shouldn't see himself as a super duper ape, but rather a unique creation that's rooted in the animal kingdom, but totally different than the animal kingdom. That's your Tzelem Elokim. And therefore, the things we do in the Mishkan remind us of our Tzelem Elokim. If Tzelem Elokim is our creativity, then what's forbidden on Shabbat is creativity. But what typifies our creativity, if I go back to anthropology, what began civilization was man domesticating wheat, number one, domesticating animals, for food, etc., right? And then clothing, which comes with it. In other words, those are all things that only humans do that animals don't do. Processing food. In other words, uniquely to humans, animals don't make wine. No animal make wine. No animal makes bread. They're hunter-gatherers, or they eat other animals. Other animals, other herbivores, other carnivores just eat the animal. They don't cook it first.
What about the
We kill
making
the animal and we
fire?
cook it.
What
Now,
about fire?
making
Creating-
fire also. Making fire, I mean, they maybe can start a fire, but they don't use fire. They don't use fire to melt down metals and make and create new the idea of melting down metal, metal, and then forming it into a kli, into a vessel, that's uniquely human as well. Now, if you follow all the things you can't do on Shabbat, are basically are those things. The whole process of making bread, the whole process of making clothing, and the process of killing animals and cooking them, etc. And the whole idea of writing something, writing down your thoughts, the idea of tiba, those are all things that are uniquely human. And the idea of industrial production. We call Menachem Machshevet. Now, what's the main avodah we do in the temple? Right? We show off our bread, don't we? Lechem apanim is showing off our bread. Lighting a candle is uniquely human. They're making light from thing. the animals on the Mizbeach are the domesticated animals. The classic ones are the kvasim, it's the classic ones, the keves, which gives also clothing, as well as meat and milk, etc. But that's all uniquely human, as well as the cow, which helps us plow the field, etc. But and of all things, we have bread, we have like fine flour, which we have processed flour, and wine, which is also uniquely human because only humans make wine. We don't take any other juice. We just have the wine, which was which is produced by man. So all the avodah that we do on a regular basis in the Mishkan all relate to our Tzelem Elokim. Now, so therefore it makes sense that's what you can't do on Shabbat as well. So you see again a deep connection between Shabbat. Now that if I'm coming to remember that God made me B'Tzelem Elokim, then all the things I'm doing in the Mishkan remind me of my Tzelem Elokim, how I'm different than an animal, but I have to use that creativity to do good, always to evaluate that I'm doing good. And therefore, the purpose of Shabbat and the purpose of the Mikdash basically share the same idea of remembering not only that God created, but now even why he created it, but what's special about man and how man needs to be thankful that his creativity is a gift from God. He has to use it properly and always has to think and evaluate to make sure he's using it properly and not doing it for tov and not for ra. And then that's as an individual, as a member of the human, as part of Brit Keshet, as part of Brit Milah, later becoming Brit Sinai. It's Brit Sinai, Brit Milah is at the seed level of Brit Sinai. But you also have to remember that as God's people, I have a commitment not just to be a good human being, but to be a nation representing God, and I have to serve God in my national behavior. It's just as important as my individual behavior. And therefore, remembering my obligation to be a good human being will be the Mishkan reflecting creation. To be a good Jew and be a good member of a nation representing God would be Har Sinai. And then I need Shabbat in the realm of time and Mishkan in the realm of space. And that's my title was a place and time. To put the two together. Of course, the Kedushat Adam will be Am Yisrael being set aside. And therefore, Shabbat is a meaningful Od Brit because it ties together the idea of chosenness and creation together with revelation in Har Sinai and the idea of Mishkan. So that was our little Ben Azmanim break from to put the Mishkan together. Both things. And then in light of that, now it's technically, so those are Melchot of Shabbat. There's just one last thing. What's our custom Friday night? We make Kiddush on wine, right? We light a candle, right? We make challah, we make bread, and we eat meat if you're not a veggie. And cook meat, etc. But all the things that we do, and the Havdil, remember Havdalah is a big deal in creation. Hashem is, remember that Vayavdel Hashem, etc. So when Shabbat is over, we do Havdalah, but that's already a class on creation. But there's so many beautiful connections between. It's such an important topic. You would think Chumash would begin with it. It's been a big topic since day one. The idea, but again, it's not knowing that God created or how He created, but what's the meaning of being human and what's the purpose of being? It's a book to understand why we're Jewish, why God chose us to be a nation, the purpose of our chosenness, and the meaning of human creativity, and how to relate to creation, how to see God behind creation, what to do. That's just to thank God for that, but remember, not just to say thank you, but act thank you for your understanding of creation. And again, how to apply that? Ask your local Navi, or maybe he'll give you, it's how to apply that in day-to-day life. That's already, that's rabbis argue how to do that. But in the bigger picture, I think that's what Chumash is highlighting. Okay, I'll take questions real fast if there are any. Nothing in the chat today. Ben is mine. No one writes in chat either today. Here's the source sheet. People want it again. No, lots of source sheet. Source sheets over here.
One footnote: the bread has to be matzah. It can't be fermented. Challah is not kosher in the Mishkan.
Yeah, because you can't have chametz. But yeah,
except on one special that's
and
a special occasion for a special purpose.
Mm-hmm. That's a shtei lechem on Shavuot.
Right. That's the only time that because the fermentation, that's Maaseh Mitzrayim. That was invented by the Mitzrim. Mm-hmm. We're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to divorce ourselves from that. You taught us that about Pesach.
Yeah. That's creativity, but going in the bad direction. getting drunk.
Can I ask you to clarify something?
Yeah, sure.
This whole connection between Shabbat and then Ot Brit for the people of Israel. If I'm looking at the Keshet as an Ot Brit, it's like for everybody. It's like for all humanity. If
That's
I'm
what God
looking
says,
at yeah. Now, if I'm looking at the story of a creation in Bereshit, also it's for all humanity. So then I'm looking at Shabbat, and it's for everybody, because it's like, and not only that, you mentioned, it became, I've been struggling with it from the beginning of your shiur, but it became even stronger when you talked about B'Tselem Elokim, because B'Tselem Elokim, it's for everybody. It's not only for the Jewish people. So then how did Shabbat turn into an Ot Brit unique to the Jewish people when it's basically part of creation and it's part of everybody else?
Yeah. I ask a better question. Why did Chazal say that if a non-Jew keeps Shabbat, you're chayiv karet? I mean, he's chayiv mitah.
Okay, that's a better question. Okay.
Is that right? And what's it? So if a non-Jew keeps Shabbat as an Ot Brit, then you're impersonating an officer. Then you can't wear a wedding ring if you're not married to that person.
But why is it taken by? Why is that taken as an Ot Brit when it's basically universal?
No, it's keeping Shabbat to remember it's Shabbat. When we keep Shabbat as an Ot Brit, that's uniquely for Am Yisrael.
We were separated out from Bnei Noach. That's why. We were separated out from Bnei Noach. That's why it got shifted just to us. That's part of the process of becoming an Am Kadosh. Goy Kadosh.
Yeah,
It didn't shift that B'Tselem Elokim. It didn't shift other things.
No, so
I don't understand that.
I'll put it this way. If the question is, did God tell us about Brit Keshet to understand Brit Milah? I'll explain what I mean. When I'm reading, what came first, Brit Keshet or Brit Milah? If I understand, what came first, Sefer Shemot or Sefer Bereshit? What my claim is, the way Chumash tells the story of creation and the flood, etc., is to appreciate our chosenness. Chumash is using the creation story and flood story to understand why God picked Am Yisrael. So, in other words, once God, after the flood, once God decides I can't start over again, then because of Brit Keshet, I need Brit Milah. But once God says I can't hit the reset button, then Kivyochel, God is stuck with his creation. We can't start over again. And mankind is mankind, and God can't start over this, can't start creation from over again. He has to deal with it. Now, man can sin and man can punish, but God has to put something, some catalyst into the system or some safety net, so when society gets really, really bad, it can fix itself. It's like I compare it to white blood cells in your, if you know your anatomy, if I understand anatomy right. I was saying you have regular blood cells, there's white blood cells that come when there's an infection. So I need something built into the system, which is a constant reminder that man needs to be good and needs to learn from his mistakes. And towards that purpose, that's why God picked Am Yisrael. Will it work? That's up to us. But that's our destiny. If it doesn't work, God gets really angry. And it can use other terms to get things to better. But that one thing that God, that's why it's a Brit Olam, it's an eternal purpose, and therefore our chosenness is eternal. It doesn't mean it's always going to work, but that purpose is eternal. And that's why you have to pass it down to every generation. It's our responsibility. But when I understand that Brit Keshet is only there to appreciate the meaning of Brit Sinai, then it makes sense why Shabbat is special to us. Because it's a story that God gave us to understand our chosenness, which is exactly the psukim why it's an old Brit. It's not explaining, I don't keep Shabbat as just to tell people to remember that God created. I'm keeping Shabbat, remember that God chose me.
So you're looking at creation with the glasses or through the prism of our chosenness already.
As Chazal say, Istako b'Yaraiso bara'ama. Remember?
Yeah.
He looked in the Torah and then he created, which I think
Right.
which I think the rabbis are saying that Bereshit was written at Har Sinai. Bereshit was given as a book written to understand why we're chosen. And when you read Bereshit that way, it's a whole different way of reading Sefer Bereshit. Am I reading Bereshit? Did God give Am Yisrael that book to understand their chosenness? And
Would it have made sense? Would it have made sense that you would have created your course starting from Ma'amad Har Sinai and going backwards then?
Yeah, but Chumash didn't do that.
No, I know, but you're looking at the structure. So, and you're looking, okay, fine.
So
Okay.
I say, but when I read Sefer Breshit, I'm reading it as a book. As I understand Breshit is a book given to Am Yisrael coming out of Egypt. And
That's why I'm asking you that question. Would it have been clearer had you started with Ma'amad Har Sinai, then go back to Bereshit?
It would have been, yeah, but okay, maybe next Google.
Next time.
Next time.
Okay, next thing, just Shabbat is, you see from the Mishkan, which is only for Am Yisrael, and the proof is, so it's like tied in that way from the Melachot.
Yeah, the Mishkan is uniquely for Am Yisrael, but we want non-Jews to come and visit if we're doing a good job.
Yeah, but not to do the Melachos.
Yeah, but no, it's our job is we need special laws to remember our responsibility. There's special laws for people working. There's a worker's guide because we're working for God. Now, there's how other nations apply that in their day-to-day life. That's up to them.
But
our goal is not to make. Our goal is to be a model nation, not to tell other people what to do.
But it says Beiti Bet Tfilah Yikare Lechol Ha'amim. So what does that mean?
They come to visit.
They come to visit.
Yeah, and to learn Kimitzin Tetzei Torah.
Right.
If we live up to it, that's what we have to. How to accomplish that? That's complicated.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
That was amazing.
Okay. Have a good week.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Soros Toros.